I'm David Bachner of Guelph, Ontario, and I get my weekly radio news on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, June the 25th. My name's Sheldon, and Jill is with me, as usual, here on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. We thank you for tuning into our show. We're here every week with 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. We have an email address for you to reach us, radioreport@yahoo.com. Our show is live streaming and archived on the CKUT website, ckut.ca. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report, has 917 members. We have 3 new members joining this week. We welcome Eric from California, Byron from Washington, D.C., and John from Montreal. You can join in with the group. Simply go to Facebook, search for International Radio Report, and join the group. Lots of information on stories we talk about on the show and other stories that we don't have time to get to in our 30 minutes every week. And if you want to listen to the show at your convenience, you can find it each week on YouTube. Look for International Radio Report on YouTube, and you can subscribe to the channel there as well. So it is a holiday weekend, a couple holiday weekends in Canada in a row. Here in Quebec, the Saint Jean-Baptiste Fête Nationale takes place June 24th, and the Canada Day celebrations, which will tell you some information on particularly ham radio events on Canada Day coming up next weekend. First off, though, there is some special programming on shortwave for Canada Day. And that is coming from a friend of ours, Tony Pavic, who lives out in Hope, British Columbia in Western Canada. And he puts together a radio show that is broadcast on shortwave called Pop Shop Radio. And he has some special programs coming up for the Canada Day weekend. The first program will be their regular show, which airs on Channel 292, which is an independent shortwave broadcaster in Germany. That will be on Wednesday, the 28th of June at 1600 UTC. And Saturday, July the 1st at 2100 UTC. Those are on 3955 and 9670 kilohertz, and those are 10 kilowatt transmissions. Then they also transmit via WRMI in Miami, Sunday, July the 2nd at 9 p.m. Eastern, 0100 UT on Monday, on 5950. That is a 100 kilowatt transmitter. And the show will be a countdown show, the C Fantastic 20. This comes from the former CFUN 14 Vancouver. And they're going to look back at what the top songs were on July the 1st in 1967, which was Canada's 100th anniversary. So they'll complete the show with classic 14 CFUN jingles as well. So it'll be a bit of a flashback, looking back at the top 20 from 1967. The theme of the show was decided way before Bell Media's announcement that the station at the old 14 CFUN frequency would be going dark. So Tony says the station may be dead, but it won't lie down. Their second show, which will air as follows, is via the Wooferton transmitter in the UK, Saturday, July 1st, 0100 UT, which is 9 p.m. Friday evening Eastern Time. That'll be on 15715 kilohertz, and that is beamed to North America with 250 kilowatts. Channel 292 will have the show Sunday, July the 2nd at 1900 UTC. That will be on 6070 kilohertz. And that program will be all Canadian content, complete with jingles from great Canadian top 40 radio stations of the past, like CKLW and Chum in Toronto. So this is kind of fun, paying tribute to Canada Day, the 100th anniversary from 1967 will be featured. A lot of Canadian music being played as well during those broadcasts. So you have a couple different opportunities to hear it. We'll put up the times and frequencies on our Facebook page, and you can check them out And certainly that UK transmission with 100 kilowatts should not be a problem to get it into North America. 250 kilowatts
250,
from the UK. The 100 watts is from the WRMI transmitter. So check it out. It's a very popular show, and he gets a lot of listeners from all over the world tuning in to Pop Shop Radio.
So, an interesting summary in the state of radio has been conducted by RAI, the radio and television service from Italy, but with collaboration from actually the HSC here in the University of Montreal. So it takes a look at the industry of radio and audio in general. And it's very, very interesting. It's a very accurate and very in-depth look at the state of radio. The document is 232 pages, so it's really, really looking at every aspect from, in Europe and even here in North America. The study is actually looking at where is exactly radio today? What do we listen to? How do we listen? The first thing that comes out, the number one place we listen to the radio still is in the car. But they're saying that right now, smartphones and computers have taken second and third place in audio access in the home. Radio is now fourth. And one of the questions that comes to mind on that study is, do you have a radio in your home? And they say that more and more it seems difficult to find one. So this is interesting. They're saying that what is happening is, of course, we are now in an era where there's so much different audio capabilities online and so on that radio isn't really in a competition with all of this. One of the things is we have 24 hours in a day, so we got to choose where we are listening to all of this. So first they say, rest assured, traditional radio, as it has been conceived for nearly a century, remains the king of the airwaves. It is still a cash cow. Network owners still do a lot of money with radio, but ad revenue continues to decline. They say that 86% of Canadians still listen to AM, FM radio on a weekly basis. But they say that in there, a quarter of those listeners also are in the podcast phenomenon. So they will listen to podcasts online. They will go and listen to all sorts of audio information. Today, most radio stations isolate and broadcast segments of their shows on various platforms. And there's, of course, the new phenomenon of online radio only. And we have an example here in Quebec called Cube Radio. It's been becoming more and more popular. We see it everywhere, even on the TV. There's big names also in those online stream only now. Here in Quebec, they're talking about Denis Lévesque and Winston McQuaid. And they say what is interesting is that they don't have to abide by CRTC rules because they're not on the airwaves. And they say that is something that you have to look into. Maybe at some point, the CRTC might need to rethink the structure of how radio needs to be to help them compete even better with all the online sources. One phenomenon that is taking away some listening time, and they're talking about it a lot, is the rise of the audiobook. And because, once again, there's 24 hours in a day, listening to an audiobook takes time away from listening to the radio or even podcasts. They say that what keeps radio alive is really live shows. Anything that is live, that is giving information, and talk radio is the most popular form of radio. They say that music radio has some popularity, but it's competing with online services that are way more interesting for anybody that listens to music, especially the younger generation. They're saying that young people, less than 25 years old, on average, listen to any form of audio 19 minutes per day more than older people. They say that the elderly is more inclined to be listening to the radio. The younger generation is more inclined to listen online to audio. They say that there's a danger also because of all of this of the culture aspect of Quebec Francophone artists, for example, but also, Canadian artists and all that, because all of the online services don't have rules. You listen to what you want. They're saying that if radio wants to continue, and they do say that there is a future in radio, but it is in a state of evolving into something different because of all the competition. And they say that if radio is to continue, it really needs to refocus and innovate in what it's actually bringing its listeners. The numbers that they have here is more than 3/4, 77% of Canadians consume online audio every month. 18 to 34-year-old, that is 95%. In Canada, there has been an average annual growth of podcasts of 12% and audiobooks of 2.5 over the past 10 years. 1/3 of Canadians, 36%, listen to podcasts that often come from radio stations that create their programs and then put them online. So they do say there's a competition going on, but radio is definitely not dead, and it still has a future.
Yeah, it has to change. It has to change with the times. It has to change with the audience. It has to offer up different things to compete. I think that's what it all comes down to. Generic radio is not going to fly. No. It's we've talked about that for years here on this program. People want to be entertained, but they want their local content. They want to feel like the programming is directed at them, not at a big broad audience somewhere out there. So we'll see what the owners and the programmers and all the consultants out there that tell radio stations what to do, are they going to pay attention to this? Are they going to see this report? Who knows? Interesting that they spent as much time and effort in putting that report together, though. Let's hope that some stations and owners take a look at it at least and consider it. Well, speaking of what radio is doing, and will they be doing new things, we have a story of something going on at the FCC, which kind of ties into what we've been talking about. It comes from Paul McLean at Radio World. The FCC will open a new window for low-powered FM stations. Some new low-powered stations will be coming to the FM band in the United States. The FCC Media Bureau announced a filing window for applications for new low-powered FM construction permits. It will be open November 1st to November the 8th. A window has been expected for some time in the wake of the 2021 window for new non-com educational applications. The window is available for low-power FM proposals in the entire FM band, channels 201 to 300, the Commission noted. This will be the first LPFM filing window since 2013, and we encourage potential applicants to begin familiarizing themselves with the application process. New applications must be filed electronically on FCC Form 2100, Schedule 318, in the Bureau's licensing management system. That Schedule 318 is being updated. The new version will be released soon, well in advance of the filing window. The Bureau said it has plans to release detailed information about filing procedures and requirements later. Interested applicants also may monitor the Audio Division webpage for information and developments. There are 1,999 licensed low-powered FMs in the country, according to the most recent FCC broadcast station data. The low-powered service was created in 2000. Stations are authorized for non-commercial educational broadcasting only to operate with an effective radiated power of no more than 100 watts at 100 feet antenna height above average terrain. Low-power FM stations are not protected from interference that may be received from other classes of FM stations. Stations are available to non-commercial, educational entities, and public safety and transportation organizations, but not to individuals or commercial operations. So I'm surprised that there are 2,000 of these stations out there. Yeah. I know a lot of them applied, got licenses, went on the air, and then figured, this is a lot of work. Yeah. And we're not getting anywhere here. And they closed up quite quickly. but still there are 2,000 of them still up and running out there. How many more they'll license, they don't really say here, but we'll see. The process begins on November the 1st, and if you wanted to have your own radio station, well, you've got to follow the guidelines. You can't just open up Gilles radio station on an FM frequency. It's got to meet all the certain guidelines. But that'll be interesting to check out and see how many applicants they receive.
So talking about research done on radio, well, from a Edison Research, motorists still love radio. This is by James Careless of Radio World. Despite all the hype surrounding in-car streamed audio, motorists still love radio best. The research proves it. That was the takeaway of an Edison Research study presentation at the World DAB Automotive 2023 conference on June 15th. The one-day conference was staged in person in Paris, France, and made available to the world online. The World DAB Association promotes the digital audio broadcasting radio transmission standard around the globe. It commissioned the Edison Research study. The presentation was based on 800 interviews with radio listeners who purchased their vehicle within the past 3 years in France, Germany, and the UK. The interviews were done with two different groups. Half the in-person interviews were done with people in their own vehicles. They drove up and we talked to them. The other half were people that Edison Research put into new vehicles with touchscreen content dashboards so that they could gauge their reactions. Based on these 800 in-car interviews, Edison Research came up with the three key findings. All three are good news for radio. First, radio is the most listened to audio platform in the car. The research confirms it. With all of the new technologies on the dashboard, radio is number one in the car. According to Edison Research data, 61% of the people interviewed said they listen to radio in the car most often. That's more than online music services, owned music collections, and others combined. Moreover, 86% listened to FM, DAB or DAB Plus radio in their vehicle in the last week. So radio listening is a solid habit among car buyers. Also, 87% of recent and prospective car buyers agree that radio is consistently reliable, and 75% agree that radio provides a better listening experience in the car than other types of audio sources. Secondly, Edison Research learned that the actual hands-on audio experience is a key part of a person's satisfaction in their vehicle, and more importantly, that removing friction from the in-car audio experience increases a person's satisfaction with a vehicle. In other words, the easier it is for a motorist to access radio on their new car dashboards, the happier they are with their experience. Third, radio is an essential part of the in-car experience. Drivers we spoke to cannot disconnect radio from the in-car experience. The two are linked in the minds of the consumer in every market we studied. The bottom line, the best way for the radio industry to maintain in-car radio's popularity with drivers is to ensure that it is available in their cars and easy to access from their car dashboards. Radio awareness was the highest in the UK, where 96% of car buyers knew about DAB. Most German car buyers are familiar with DAB at 84%, but awareness is lagging in France, where only 45% of the car buyers' population is familiar with the term. However, most of those who are aware of DAB use it. So it's interesting to see the popularity of radio in cars. We say it all the time. And in this case, they're talking, of course, they're really pushing DAB or the digital audio broadcasting part of it. But hey, it's radio.
Yep. And in the car, we keep talking about it. It's important. It's easy to use. I like that they tested out with these touch screens. Some of these cars, the new cars, look so complicated. It's running a computer, and it's going to cause accidents, people getting distracted by all these things in front of them. So the old conventional tune the radio and make it easy, it's still a good thing, I think, for not just for the entertainment value of it and information value, but for safety reasons as well. The more complicated these cars get, the more something is likely to go wrong, I think.
So, what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun is extremely active. There's a lot of sunspot groups on the sun, and one of them is particularly interesting because it's creating X-class flares. Two of them have happened in the past 48 hours as we're recording. Conditions are amazing with the high frequencies, with the sunspot number now at 176 and the solar flux at 173. What's coming up this week? Well, we'll have to see if the X and the solar flaring continues, which does make radio blackouts and possibly maybe create geomagnetic storming at some point. One of the things that is interesting, they are talking about a new way to detect solar flares. So around the world, ham radio operators are experimenting with a new way to detect solar flares, the Doppler shift method. Brian Curtis of Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, demonstrated the technique on June 20th when the sun actually did a powerful X 1.1 class solar flare. He says, I monitor the frequency and field strength of Canada's CHU time station transmitting at 7850 kHz, explains Curtis. During the X-class flare event, I was able to detect the Doppler shift of the station's carrier frequency. It shifted by 5 Hz, which is small change, but it's very obvious. When radiation from the solar flare hits Earth's atmosphere, it ionizes the air, temporarily boosting the thickness of our planet's ionosphere. Any radio station skipping off the ionosphere will suddenly find its frequency Doppler shifted because its reflection point is moving. Shortwave stations such as WWV, WWVH, and CHU transmit carriers with atomic clock grade frequency stability, so they are perfect sources for Doppler monitoring. I have been monitoring radio stations for decades, noting sudden changes in signal strength as a means of monitoring space weather events, says Curtis. It is only fairly recently, less than 4 months, that I started the experiment with monitoring the Doppler shift of HF stations. The June 20th X-class flare event is by far the most dramatic that I have witnessed thus far. So there's actually a link where you can do your own monitoring if you have the equipment for solar flares. So it's kind of interesting to see that even ham radio operators and radio listeners can have their own space weather station at home. And you know what? If you want to monitor, if you want to have the pleasure of maybe even trying that, well, there is one thing you got to do, is to turn on a radio and listen.
Hello, I'm Saul Brody from Philadelphia, PA, USA. You're tuned to the International Radio Report, 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Our next story is about a station that we've talked about for quite a few years on the show. It's a very unique station, historical station in Sweden called SAQ. And they will be on the air for Alexanderson Day on July the 2nd of 2023. This comes from Ralph Bender in Germany. The Alexander Association welcomes visitors to the Alexanderson Day, Sunday, July 2nd, 2023, from 0800 to 1400 UTC. Together with the World Heritage Grimeton radio station, they will be offering many activities for the whole family throughout the day. But the key radio aspect of all of this is putting the VLF transmitter at 17.2 kilohertz on the air for some special transmissions. These are only done in CW. It's a very, very, very low frequency. Many of you may not have radios that even tune all the way down to 17.2 kilohertz, but they will be sending out messages a couple different times during the day. What we're going to do is put up the whole list of the activities on our Facebook page so you can check them out and see if it might be possible, if you're in a very quiet location, to actually hear these special messages from the SAQ station in Sweden. There will also be a YouTube channel available where you can watch all the activities going on throughout the day. We'll post that for you as well. And there'll be a special amateur radio station operating. Sierra Kilo 6, Sierra Alpha Quebec, will be operating from 1000 Central European Time, which is 900 UTC, until 1600 UTC. In CW and SSB, we'll post the frequencies where you might be able to find them. as well as information to send in a QSL request for those stations. You can get special QSLs for the 17.2 kilohertz transmissions as well. So we'll put all this information up available for you on the Facebook group, and do let us know if you're lucky enough to hear these very, very unique and very difficult to hear transmissions on 17.2 kilohertz on Sunday, July the 2nd.
And we have upcoming ham radio contests.
We have a big one in Canada. We mentioned off the top of the show that Canada Day is coming up on July the 1st. And the Radio Amateurs of Canada organize the annual RAC Canada Day contest. It is to celebrate the anniversary of Canada's Confederation. And they sponsor the Canada Day contest, and amateurs from all over the world are invited to participate in Canada's birthday party on the air. It runs all bands 160 through 2 meters. It is CW and phone, even AM as well, if you want to use that mode for SS or SSB and FM. And you can contact stations in Canada. You can gain points, and you can look for special RAC stations, which are on the air in each of Canada's provinces and territories. So they all have the suffix of RAC. So, for example, here in Quebec, Victor Alpha 2, Radio Amateurs of Canada, VA2RAC is a special call sign. So all of them across the country will have RAC in their call sign. So that is a big event. We hope that some of you will participate either as a ham or as a listener.
Yep, time to listen to those stations in every province and territories. There's the Venezuelan Independence Day contest, 0-100 Zulu to 2359 Zulu, July the 1st, organized by the Radio Club Venezolano. Bands 10, 15, 20, 40, and 80 meters, SSB, CW, and PSK.
The New Zealand Association of Radio Transmitters Incorporated is holding their memorial contest, 0800 Zulu, July 1st to 1100 Zulu, July 2nd. It's 80 meters only, CW, and SSB.
There's the DLDX contest. It's 1100 Zulu, July 1st to 1059 Zulu, July 2nd, organized by the DLDX RTTY contest group. Modes are only RTTY and Baudo, and the bands are all amateur bands in the HF except the work bands.
And finally, the Marconi Memorial HF Contest, 1400 Zulu, July 1st to 1400 Zulu, July 2nd, organized by the Italian Radio Amateur Association. The aim of the Marconi Memorial Contest is to commemorate the 2nd century of radio and its father, Marconi. It's a worldwide competition. Everybody can work everybody, but only in CW. 10 meters through 160 meters, excluding the work bands, are allowed, and you are to follow the IARU band plans.
And we are out of time.
Lots of information to squeeze into 30 minutes. It doesn't always work, but we try our best. We thank you for tuning in, and do check out our Facebook page. Join the YouTube channel as well to be able to get the show whenever it is convenient for you. Have a great weekend. If you're in Canada, celebrate Canada Day, and we'll have July 4th coming up, and we'll talk about that on next week's show for our American friends. Have a great week coming up, and we'll talk to you again next Sunday here on CKUT with the International Radio Report.
Don't forget to check out for some pirate activity with all of these holidays coming.
That's true. We forgot to mention that, but yep, they will probably come out of the woodwork, so Check them out.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye now.
across Asia and the Pacific. You're listening to Radio Australia.